My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 42 years old, an engineer in Chicago. I build things for a living, bridges, roads, foundations that are supposed to last lifetimes. I thought I had built one at home too. A marriage, a family. I was wrong, because one message on my phone destroyed it all. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind where the sky over Chicago glowed with the last orange of summer. My 7-year-old daughter Sophie was coloring at the kitchen table, humming to herself. The sound used to be my comfort proof that life was simple, steady. Then my phone buzzed. I thought it was a client. Maybe Thomas, my oldest friend and lawyer, reminding me about golf that weekend. Instead, the name glowing on the screen was my wife, Melissa. The message was short, almost casual. Daniel, I'm flying to Los Angeles with Adrian for a week. Don't be jealous. Take care of Sophie. I read it twice, 3 times. My brain refused to process the words. Adrian, her ex. The man she dated back in college. The man I always suspected she never truly buried in her past. I stared at the glowing screen while Sophie pressed her crayons harder into the paper, the wax squeaking. I couldn't breathe. There are moments in life when anger explodes like thunder, when betrayal rips a scream out of you before you can stop it. This wasn't one of those moments. I didn't scream. I didn't smash my phone. I didn't storm through the house demanding answers. I simply set the phone face down on the counter. Because Sophie looked up at me then, her big brown eyes wide with innocence. Daddy, what's wrong? I forced a smile. Nothing, sweetheart, just work stuff. She went back to coloring her little world intact. And in that moment, I made a decision. Melissa wanted to play her games. Fine. But she wasn't going to drag Sophie into them. I would protect my daughter's peace, even if it meant swallowing the fire burning inside me. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I sat in the living room alone. The house felt foreign, like a stage set I no longer belonged to. Melissa's picture still hung on the wall, her in a blue dress, smiling, holding Sophie when she was a toddler. I stared at it until my vision blurred. My wife was in Los Angeles with Adrian, and she had told me not to be jealous, as if betrayal could be softened by a smiley face in a text. It wasn't jealousy, it was humiliation. I was the man at home cooking dinner for our child while she jetted off with her old flame. She thought I'd stay quiet, play the good husband, keep the house warm. That's when the clarity hit me. Melissa thought my kindness was weakness. She mistook patience for permission. She was wrong. I picked up my phone again, but this time not to message her. Instead, I scrolled to Thomas Grant, my best friend since college, and one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in Illinois. It was late. I hesitated. Then I hit call. He answered on the 3rd ring, groggy but alert. Daniel, everything okay? I laughed bitterly. Not even close. Can you meet tomorrow? I need a lawyer. And a friend. His voice sharpened instantly. What happened? I told him the message, Adrian, Los Angeles. Silence hung heavy on the line. Then Thomas said, all right, sit tight, don't confront her yet. Come to my office tomorrow, we'll start building this right. Building what I asked. He didn't hesitate. Your future. Without her. The next morning, I dropped Sophie at school, kissed her forehead, and watched her skip inside with her backpack bouncing. She had no idea her world was cracking beneath her feet. At Thomas's office, the city buzzed outside, but inside it was quiet, focused. He poured 2 coffees, slid one toward me, and leaned forward. Show me the message, he said. I handed him my phone. He read it once, his expression hardening. This is all we need to start. Clear evidence of infidelity. She admitted it in writing. Admitted I asked. She didn't say she was sleeping with him, just... He cut me off. Daniel. A married woman doesn't fly across the country with her ex for a week and text her husband not to be jealous unless she's already crossed the line. Courts don't care about technicalities. This is enough. I sat back, the weight of it sinking in. What do I do? Thomas's eyes were sharp. First, we protect you. Freeze joint accounts. Move your savings into an individual account. Cancel her credit cards. You don't let her burn through your money while she's sunbathing with Adrian. The thought of Melissa handing over my hard-earned cash for hotel cocktails with Adrian made my stomach twist. Thomas went on. Next custody. You want Sophie with you, right? Of course, my voice cracked. She's my world. Then we build the case, her absence, the affair, her instability. You show the judge you're the steady parent, the anchor. With this message, with witnesses, we can win. I rubbed my face, exhausted already. And Melissa. His lips curled into something colder than a smile. She chose war the second she sent that text. You don't fight fair with people who spit on vows. You fight smart. And you let me handle the fire. I left his office with a folder of paperwork and a new resolve. That evening, while Sophie played in the living room, I logged into our accounts. One by one, I moved the balances, shut down the cards, secured the assets. My fingers shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Melissa had lit the match. I was just making sure she burned alone. I called a private investigator, Colin Myers, recommended by Thomas. Follow her, I told him. I want pictures, videos, proof she can't deny. He grunted. Give me 48 hours. Meanwhile, Melissa's silence was deafening. No check-ins, no calls to Sophie. Nothing but that single message hanging in my phone like poison. Sophie asked once, when's Mommy coming back? I swallowed hard. Soon, sweetheart, don't worry. But inside, I wasn't sure I wanted her back at all. 2 days later, Colin sent the first photos. Melissa, at a luxury hotel in Los Angeles. Laughing with Adrian at the pool, his hand on her waist, her lips close to his ear. The images seared into me not because they were shocking, but because they confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. That night, I tucked Sophie into bed, kissed her forehead, and stood at her doorway watching her sleep. The rise and fall of her chest was the only steady thing left in my world. Melissa had chosen Adrian. She had chosen betrayal. But I would choose something else. I would choose revenge. And by the time she came back from Los Angeles, she wouldn't be walking into the same house. She'd be walking into the ruins of the life she thought she controlled. When you build bridges, you learn something about structure. One small crack doesn't destroy it. Not right away. It's the weight that follows the pressure that exposes the weakness, the hidden fractures no one sees until steel bends and concrete splits. Melissa's message was the crack. The weight came after, and I made sure she felt every pound. 2 days after I hired Colin, my phone buzzed with his update. A new batch of photos, a video. I opened the file and felt my chest tighten. There she was, Melissa in Los Angeles, strolling hand in hand with Adrian through a hotel lobby. His arm slung across her shoulders like it had always belonged there. They were laughing, oblivious, as if the world didn't exist. The video cut to them at dinner. She leaned across the table, lips close to his. He brushed her hair behind her ear with practiced ease. And then came the gut punch, her laughing, saying to the waiter loud enough to catch on Colin's recorder, "My husband, O. Daniel's safe. He'll always be there. He's the dependable one." Dependable. The word burned hotter than betrayal itself. She wasn't just cheating, she was mocking me. I called Thomas. My voice was low, steady. "We have proof." His response was immediate. "Good. Send it over. I'll file it. She won't know what hit her." By that evening, my assets were shielded under my name alone. Joint accounts dissolved, her credit frozen. The car lease we shared terminated and replaced with one under my sole ownership. Every escape route she thought she had was gone. Melissa was living her fantasy in Los Angeles, but when she came home, she'd returned to a cage she couldn't unlock. That weekend, Sophie asked if Mommy was bringing her a souvenir. The question pierced me deeper than any photo. I smiled gently. Maybe, we'll see. She clapped her hands, hopeful. Innocence is cruel that way, it believes, even when the truth is already rotting. I tucked her into bed, promising myself she'd never see the rot. Not if I could help it. On Sunday, Colin called again. "You're going to want to see this." He sent over a fresh video of Melissa and Adrian by the pool. Sunlight gleamed on her sunglasses. She leaned back, sipping a drink, laughing like the world owed her nothing but joy. Then Adrian's voice, "Don't worry about Carter. He's boring. You deserve more than a 9-to-5 husband with a mortgage." Melissa's response, a giggle. "Exactly. I need excitement. Daniels. Safe, but safe is dull. Safe, dull, boring." Words meant to diminish me. Instead, they sharpened me. If she thought I was dull, she hadn't seen what happened when a steady man finally broke. Thomas and I met Monday morning. His office buzzed with the rhythm of cases in progress, phones, ringing assistants, darting in and out. But when he shut the door, it was just us. He spread the photos across the desk like evidence in a crime scene. She handed us everything he said. This isn't just an affair, it's abandonment. She left her child for a week to chase an ex. Judges hate that. I rubbed my temple. So what's next? Custody, he replied. We file for temporary custody of Sophie. With this, the judge will side with you. Financially, she's cornered. Emotionally, she looks reckless. This is checkmate. The word tasted good, checkmate. For years, Melissa had called the shots at home, planning vacations, choosing furniture, even deciding where Sophie went to school. She'd made me feel like a supporting character in my own marriage. Not anymore. While Thomas prepared filings, I went home and played my role. The steady father. The dependable one Melissa thought was too boring to keep. I cooked Sophie dinner, helped her with homework, read her stories at night. I smiled through it all, hiding the war I was fighting in silence. But at night, when the house was still, I scrolled through Colin's photos again. Each one cut me open, but each one also stitched resolve. Melissa thought she was safe. She thought I'd wait at home, arms open, while she played house with Adrian. She had no idea the walls were closing in. Midweek. Colin surprised me with another update. Not about Melissa this time, but about Adrian. Guys married, Colin reminded me. His wife's name's Evelyn, CEO of some healthcare company in Dallas. Powerful, the kind of woman who doesn't like surprises. I leaned forward. She knows. Not yet, but she will if you want her to. The thought sat heavy in my chest. A nuclear option. Drag Adrian's world down alongside Melissa's. I thought of Sophie. Of what kind of future I wanted her to see. Then I nodded. Tell me where to find her. That Friday, I boarded a plane to Dallas. Evelyn Brooks wasn't just Adrian's wife, she was his mirror opposite. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, a presence that filled the boardroom where we met. I laid the photos on the table between us. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just stared, lips pressed into a line of steel. When the silence stretched, she finally said, "Thank you." For what I asked. For confirmation, she replied. I always suspected. Now I know. And now Adrian will know what it costs to humiliate me. Her voice was cold enough to freeze glass. I realized then I hadn't just found an ally. I'd unleashed a force. On the flight back to Chicago, I looked out the window at the endless sprawl of lights below. Melissa was still in Los Angeles, laughing with Adrian, unaware that the ground beneath her was cracking. When she stepped off that plane, she'd find no money, no safety net, and no way back into the life she had mocked. And thanks to Evelyn, Adrian wouldn't be standing beside her for long. The dependable man she underestimated had become something else entirely. Not dull, not safe, deadly. There's a strange peace that comes when you stop trying to hold something together. When the dam finally cracks, you don't waste energy patching holes, you stand back and watch the water roar. That was me. For years, I'd been the man who fixed, the husband who smoothed arguments, the father who held the house steady. Dependable, predictable, safe. But once Melissa boarded that plane to Los Angeles with Adrian, I stopped fixing. I let the cracks spread. And now, with Evelyn Brooks by my side, I was ready to watch the flood. It started on a Monday morning. Colin texted me first, check the news. I opened my phone. Adrian Brooks, real estate broker, local rising star, had been terminated from his firm. No details given, just the sterile language of corporate dismissal. But I didn't need details. I knew Evelyn's fingerprints when I saw them. By noon, whispers spread through Dallas business circles, misuse of company resources, personal conduct, unbecoming whispers of infidelity. Evelyn hadn't just pulled the rug out, she'd lit it on fire. Adrian's name was radioactive overnight. And Melissa. She was still sipping cocktails in Los Angeles, draped across his arm like nothing could touch them. 2 days later, Evelyn called me. Her tone was clipped efficient. Adrian is out. His account's frozen. He doesn't have a job, and he doesn't have access to a single dime of mine. He's on his own. I pictured him pacing some hotel room phone, buzzing with rejection, his charm cracking under pressure. And Melissa, I asked quietly. She'll learn what it feels like to stand next to a sinking ship, Evelyn replied. Trust me. He'll cut her loose the second she costs him more than she's worth. Her certainty chilled me, and yet I believed her. That night, Colin delivered the proof. A video clip from the hotel lobby in Los Angeles. Adrian and Melissa standing at the desk, tension etched across their faces. Adrian's card declined, the clerk shaking her head. Melissa fumbling through her purse, panic flashing when she realized her own cards were frozen too. They argued, voices sharp, brittle. Adrian slammed his hand on the counter, then turned on her with a glare that said everything she was dead weight now. The video ended with him walking away, leaving her standing there humiliated under the fluorescent lights. I watched it 3 times. Not with joy, not with gloating. With silence. She had mocked me as safe. Now she was unsafe with the man she'd chosen, and I didn't lift a finger. Melissa came home the following weekend. Sophie ran to her at the airport, arms wide, innocence unbroken. Melissa scooped her up, kissing her cheeks as if nothing had happened. But her eyes found mine over Sophie's shoulder, and in them I saw the cracks, fear, confusion, the realization that the ground beneath her was no longer steady. We drove home in silence. Sophie chattered about school, about the drawing she made for Mommy, about how she missed her. Melissa nodded, smiled, pretended. But I noticed the way her fingers twitched when she reached for her phone, and saw the notifications decline, charges, unanswered calls from Adrian's silence from Evelyn's camp. The empire she thought she'd built in Los Angeles had crumbled before the plane even landed. That evening, after Sophie was asleep, Melissa cornered me in the kitchen. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight, "something's wrong with my cards. None of them work." "Do you know anything about that? I kept my tone even. I handled our finances while you were gone. Things needed restructuring. Restructuring." Her eyes flared. "You froze everything." I looked at her without blinking. I protected what was mine, and Sophie's. She stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. For once, Melissa, always sharp with words, always ready with excuses, had nothing. The days that followed broke her veneer further. Calls to Adrian went unanswered. She left voicemails that turned from sweet to desperate to angry. I knew because Colin had access to her phone records. Adrian had dropped her, Evelyn had gutted him, and Melissa was left adrift. At dinner one night, Sophie asked about Adrian's innocent curiosity from a child who'd overheard too much. Melissa choked on her water. I answered calmly. "Adrian won't be around anymore, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy will take care of you." Melissa shot me a look that could have killed. But in front of Sophie, she said nothing, and in that silence I felt the shift. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one cornered. She was. Thomas kept working behind the scenes, building the custody case. Every absence, every message, every photo Colin provided became another brick in the wall closing around her. He told me one afternoon judges don't like instability. She abandoned her daughter for a fling. She's financially reckless. You're the steady one. This is open and shut. I nodded. That's the plan. But inside, I wrestled with a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, sorrow, a quiet rage that hadn't burned out yet. Melissa had underestimated me. She thought I was dull, predictable, the man who would wait at home forever. Instead, I had become the storm she never saw coming. By the end of that month, Melissa was unraveling. Her parents called asking why she was back home, why Adrian wasn't in the picture anymore, why neighbors were whispering. She deflected, lied, cried, but the truth was out there buzzing through social circles like electricity. And I watched, silent, steady, cold. Because sometimes revenge isn't about shouting. Sometimes it's about sitting still while the person who betrayed you burns themselves down. Melissa was burning. And I had plenty of water, but I wasn't lifting a finger to put out the flames. Secrets rot quietly at first. They sit in the dark, hidden, feeding on silence. But once the light hits them, they don't just wither, they explode. Evelyn Brooks turned on the floodlights. It began with a single photo. Melissa and Adrian at the Los Angeles pool, his hand low on her waist, her head tilted back in laughter. The picture surfaced on a Dallas gossip blog known for eating reputations alive. No source named, but I knew. Evelyn. By afternoon, 3 more photos appeared, Melissa leaning into Adrian at dinner, Melissa kissing his cheek outside the hotel. By evening, the images were everywhere. Social media group chats, even a whisper in the Chicago office where Melissa worked. The internet doesn't just spread news, it multiplies it. Melissa's private betrayal was now public spectacle. I came home that night to find her sitting at the kitchen table, laptop, open face, pale. She didn't even look up when I set my keys down. "Have you seen it?" she whispered. "Yes." Her eyes finally met mine, brimming with panic. Everyone's talking about it. My parents called, my co-workers. I can't even log into Facebook without seeing comments. Daniel, this isn't just embarrassing, it's destroying me. I studied her for a long moment. Good. She flinched like I'd struck her. The calls kept coming. Her mother rang me once, her voice sharp with disappointment. Daniel, what is happening with Melissa? People are calling me. I can't even go to church without whispers, I answered calmly. Ask your daughter. She's the one who booked the flights. Silence. Then a strained sigh. We raised her better than this. Maybe they had. But somewhere between better and now, Melissa had chosen otherwise. At Sophie's school, I noticed the glances from other parents. Some pitied me, others judged me, a few offered awkward encouragement. I ignored them all. Sophie deserved protection, not more drama. At home, I built walls of normalcy for her. Pancakes in the morning, bedtime stories at night. She asked why Mommy seemed sad all the time now. I told her Mommy had made mistakes, but Daddy was here steady. Always steady. Melissa hated hearing that, but she didn't argue in front of Sophie. Not anymore. One night, she cornered me again in the kitchen. Daniel, this has gone too far. I made a mistake, but Evelyn is trying to destroy me. She doesn't have to try, I replied. You destroyed yourself. She just turned on the lights. Her voice cracked. You're enjoying this. I didn't deny it. Because I wasn't just watching her collapse, I was orchestrating it. Every frozen account, every court filing, every whispered conversation with Evelyn, it all built to this. Thomas was thrilled. When I met him in his office with the folder of photos Evelyn had sent directly, he nearly smiled. This is gold. Judges hate public scandal, especially when kids are involved. She abandoned Sophie for an affair, and now it's not even private. Custody is yours to lose. I exhaled slowly. What's next? We file for temporary custody immediately, he said. The narrative is clear. You're the steady parent. She's unstable, reckless, irresponsible. We'll request supervised visitation until she proves otherwise. The words felt heavy final, but they also felt right. Melissa had gambled with Sophie's stability. I wouldn't let her gamble again. At home, I began collecting the quiet details Thomas asked for. Report cards, pediatrician records, notes from Sophie's teachers about my involvement, her attendance, the times Melissa had been absent from school events. The picture was building Daniel Carter, the dependable father. Melissa Carter, the reckless mother who chose lust over responsibility. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about Sophie, about giving her the security Melissa had mocked me for embodying. Safe wasn't dull. Safe was survival. Meanwhile, Melissa crumbled under the public eye. She stopped going to work, claiming sick days that turned into unpaid leave. Neighbors avoided her. Friends stopped calling. Even her own parents grew distant, ashamed of the whispers they couldn't silence. One night I overheard her on the phone crying to Adrian's voicemail. Please call me back. I need you. Everyone's turning against me. Don't leave me in this alone. The line beeped when the voicemail cut her off. He never called back. I lay awake that night listening to her muffled sobs through the wall. Once I might have gone to her. Once I might have held her until the storm passed. But that man was gone. Now I let her cry, because she had earned every tear. When the custody papers were ready, Thomas handed them to me with a firm nod. She'll fight, of course. But she doesn't have the money, the stability, or the evidence. This is yours. I signed without hesitation. Melissa thought she could humiliate me, strip me down to nothing but the dull, safe husband at home. But she had underestimated what safety really meant. It meant being the rock, the anchor, the one left standing when the storm blew everything else away. And when the storm finally cleared, Sophie would still have a father she could count on. Melissa would have nothing but whispers. Courtrooms don't care about feelings. They care about order, about documents, about the cold weight of evidence. Melissa always lived in feelings, passion, desire, excitement. That world doesn't survive under fluorescent lights and a judge's gavel. And that's why I knew she'd lose. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Navy suit polished, shoes, tie knotted with precision. Not flashy, not desperate, just steady. The picture of a father who showed up on time, who did the job right, who didn't break under pressure. Sophie stayed with the sitter. She asked why Daddy had to go to court. I told her because I love you, and I want to make sure I can always take care of you. She hugged me, small arms wrapping tight around my waist. That hug gave me all the strength I needed. At the courthouse, Thomas was waiting. His briefcase bulged with documents, photos, recordings, my arsenal. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded, more than ready. Melissa arrived late. Disheveled eyes, red makeup smudged from nights of crying. She didn't have a lawyer, just a public defender assigned at the last minute. Already the imbalance was clear. When the bailiff called our names, we stepped forward. The judge glanced between us, expression unreadable. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter," he began. "We are here to determine temporary custody of your daughter, Sophie Carter. Each of you will present your case." My pulse steadied. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Thomas went first. He laid it all out with surgical precision. "Your Honor." Mrs. Carter abandoned her daughter for a week to travel to Los Angeles with another man, her former partner, Adrian Brooks. During this time, Mr. Carter remained the sole caregiver. We have text messages, photographs, and video evidence documenting the affair and the abandonment. He handed the judge a folder thick with proof. The message. The photos from Colin. Even Melissa's mocking words caught on tape. Furthermore, Thomas continued, "Mrs. Carter's actions have been made public, damaging not only her own reputation, but potentially that of her child. Mr. Carter, by contrast, has maintained stability, managing finances, providing consistent care, attending school meetings, and preserving Sophie's routine." He turned toward me. "Mr. Carter has been dependable. Mrs. Carter has been reckless. For Sophie's well-being, we request full temporary custody be awarded to Mr. Carter with supervised visitation rights for Mrs. Carter until she demonstrates stability." The words hung heavy in the room. The judge nodded slowly, flipping through the documents. Then it was Melissa's turn. She stood, hands trembling, voice cracking. "Your Honor, I admit I made a mistake, but I love my daughter. I never stopped loving her. I was confused, I was hurting. I made poor choices, but Sophie is my life. Please don't take her from me." Her defender mumbled about rehabilitation, about second chances, but it sounded weak against the mountain Thomas had built. Melissa's tears flowed freely, her sobs echoing in the courtroom. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the text. "Don't be jealous. Take care of Sophie." She had treated me like a placeholder. She had treated Sophie like an afterthought. And pity turned back to steel. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Mrs. Carter, your actions demonstrate instability and poor judgment. Abandoning a child for personal reasons is a grave concern. The evidence of your affair now public further undermines your case." He turned to me. "Mr. Carter, you have shown consistency, responsibility, and stability. For Sophie's well-being, I am granting you full temporary custody. Mrs. Carter will have supervised visitation once per week to be arranged with the court-appointed supervisor." The gavel struck, final. Melissa gasped, collapsing into her chair, sobbing openly. I sat still, my hands folded, my expression calm, because this wasn't about gloating, it was about protecting Sophie. Afterward, in the hallway, Melissa caught my arm. Her eyes were wild, desperate. "Daniel, please, don't do this. Don't take Sophie from me. I'll change. I'll do better. Just don't shut me out." I looked at her, the woman who once promised forever, now reduced to begging in front of strangers. "You didn't lose Sophie because of me," I said quietly. "You lost her because of you." Her grip loosened. Tears streamed. She whispered, "You'll regret this." I shook my head. "No, I regret trusting you. That's all." Then I walked away, leaving her in the ruins of her own choices. That night, I picked Sophie up from the sitter. She asked if everything was okay. I knelt down, cupped her face, and said, "Yes, sweetheart. Daddy's here. And I'm not going anywhere." She smiled, small and pure. In that moment, I knew I had won not against Melissa, not against Adrian, but against the chaos she tried to drag us into. I had built something Melissa couldn't break. Not excitement, not passion, not fleeting desire, but safety, stability. The one thing she mocked, the one thing Sophie needed most. Safe wasn't boring, safe was survival. And I was the last one standing. When the gavel fell, Melissa didn't just lose custody, she lost her mask. The strong, independent woman who once strutted through life with her chin high and her laughter sharp was gone. What remained was someone hollow, bruised by whispers, abandoned by the man she chose, and caged by the system she thought she could outrun. And I watched every step of her spiral. The news spread fast. Court records are public. Neighbors talked. Parents at Sophie's school whispered. I didn't need to stoke the fire. Melissa's reputation carried the torch on its own. She stopped showing her face in most places. No more office lunches, no more yoga classes. Even her own parents kept her at a distance, their pride crushed by the daughter who had dragged their name through the mud. One Sunday morning, I saw her car parked outside their house as I drove Sophie to a playdate. Bags piled in the back seat. Melissa stood on the porch crying while her father shook his head, pointing toward the street. They wouldn't let her in. By the time I circled back that afternoon, the car was gone. She had nowhere left. Adrian, he vanished completely. Colin confirmed what Evelyn had promised. Adrian was blacklisted from every brokerage firm in Dallas. His accounts frozen, his credit tanked, his name a cautionary tale whispered at networking events. Melissa called him for weeks, her number flooding his voicemail. He never answered. The man she left me for had cut her off without a word. Evelyn had told me once he'll drop her the second she costs him more than she's worth. She was right. Meanwhile, Sophie thrived. At school, she settled back into her routine. I kept our mornings consistent breakfast drop-off hugs at the door. Afternoons filled with homework, soccer practice, bedtime stories. Stability. The very thing Melissa mocked as dull became the lifeline that held Sophie steady. One evening, while brushing her teeth, Sophie looked at me in the mirror. "Daddy, you're always here." The words nearly broke me. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Always, sweetheart." Melissa had chosen absence. I chose presence. And Sophie noticed. Children always do. The first supervised visit was awkward. We met at the family center, sterile walls painted with faded murals of cartoon animals. A social worker hovered nearby, clipboard in hand. Melissa sat stiffly on the couch, eyes swollen, hands twisting in her lap. When Sophie walked in, Melissa broke into tears, clutching her too tightly, whispering apologies the child didn't understand. Sophie squirmed, glancing at the social worker, unsure. I watched from the corner, silent. After the hour ended, Melissa turned to me, eyes pleading. "Daniel, please, can't we work something out between us? This supervision, it's humiliating." I met her gaze without flinching. Humiliation isn't the problem. Choices are. She flinched, then looked away. Each visit played the same. Melissa tried to paste herself back together, but the cracks showed. She brought gifts she couldn't afford, toys with clearance stickers still on them. She made promises she couldn't keep, talking about trips she'd never plan. Sophie smiled politely, but her trust leaned toward me. At the end of every visit, she clung to my hand, not her mother's. And Melissa saw it. The realization drained her more than any court ruling. At night, I lay awake thinking about the irony. She once mocked me for being safe, said it was dull, predictable, boring. Now, the only way she could see her daughter was through the safety I provided, the safety of court supervisors and schedules. She mocked stability, then begged it for mercy. Colin called me one evening with an update. She's trying to find work. No one's hiring. Employers see her name, Google her, and pass. She's been bouncing between short-term rentals. Money's drying up. I nodded slowly. Let her bounce. I didn't need to crush her further. Life was doing that for me. The strange part was how quiet my own world became. For the first time in years, no more arguing, no more suspicion, no more pretending. Just me and Sophie, our little routines, our steady days. Neighbors still whispered, but I stopped caring. Friends asked how I was holding up, and I just said, "We're fine." Because we were. Melissa's storm had passed, and all it left behind was clarity. One night, Sophie asked me why Mommy cried so much. I held her close and answered gently. Because sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt, and when they realize it, it makes them sad. Sophie thought for a moment, then whispered, "I'm glad you didn't make those choices." Her words cut deep. I kissed her hair and promised myself I never would. Melissa continued to spiral: job rejections, strained visits, silence from Adrian. Her once perfect image was shattered, and she couldn't glue it back together. But me, I kept walking forward, one steady step at a time. Melissa once told me I was boring, predictable, too safe. Funny thing about boring doesn't collapse. Boring doesn't beg. Boring doesn't end up sleeping on a friend's couch because the world has closed its doors. Melissa wasn't safe anymore. She was the opposite. She was a storm without shelter, and storms always burn themselves out. It began with the eviction notice. Colin texted me a photo of the paper taped to her rental's door. She hadn't made payments in 2 months. The landlord had finally run out of patience. "She's got a week," Colin said. A week. That's how far she'd fallen from Los Angeles cocktails to counting days on a lease she couldn't afford. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not with joy, not with pity, with finality. Because this was the life she'd chosen, and now the bill had come due. Her parents called me not long after. Daniel, her father, said, his voice low and weary. She showed up at our house again. "We told her she can't stay here anymore. We raised her better than this. But we can't clean up her mess for her." I listened silently. Her mother's voice broke through brittle with shame. "We're sorry, Daniel. Sorry for what she's done to you, to Sophie, to all of us." I almost said, "Don't apologize for her." But instead, I just said, "Sophie's okay." That's what matters. Because it was. At the next supervised visit, Melissa looked worse than ever. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, hands trembling as she clutched Sophie like she might vanish if she let go. "Sweetheart, Mommy's just been going through a hard time," she whispered, "but I love you so much, more than anything." Sophie nodded, polite but distant. She answered questions about school, showed her drawings, then quickly looked for me when the hour ended. Melissa noticed. I saw it in the way her shoulders sagged, the way her tears started before Sophie had even left the room. Afterward, she cornered me in the parking lot. "Daniel, please, tell the judge I can see her more. I need more time." I shook my head. "The judge sees what you show him. I don't have to say a word." Her face crumpled. She leaned against her car, sobbing. I walked away. Meanwhile, Sophie grew stronger. Her teachers told me she seemed more focused, happier. She talked about soccer practice, about new friends, about bedtime stories with Daddy. One evening, she curled up beside me on the couch. "Daddy, I don't like it when Mommy cries." I stroked her hair. "I know, sweetheart, but that's not your fault. Grown-ups cry for their own reasons." "Do you cry?" she asked. "Not anymore," I answered. And it was true. My tears had dried the night Melissa sent that message. Everything since then was calculation, action, resolve. Sophie smiled faintly. "Good. I don't want you sad." Her words were small, but they carried more weight than Melissa ever gave me. Colin kept feeding me updates. Melissa applied for jobs, marketing firms, retail positions, even receptionist roles. Each one fell through. Employers Googled her name, saw the photos, the court filings, the scandal. No one wanted the liability. "She's running out of options," Colin said. "Might end up in shelters if this keeps up." I nodded. "Let her run out." "Because I wasn't here to rescue her. Not anymore." Her parents cut her off completely by month's end. I heard from neighbors that they'd left her bags on the lawn after one last argument. Rain soaked through them before she came back to collect. The image stuck with me. Melissa, once polished and proud, dragging wet clothes into her trunk under the eyes of people who once envied her. Humiliation wasn't a weapon I had to wield. It wielded itself. I focused on Sophie. We painted her room together, soft yellow walls, stickers of stars and moons on the ceiling. She laughed when paint splattered her nose, and for a moment I forgot every betrayal. Because this was what mattered. Not revenge, not public opinion, not Melissa's spiral. Sophie's smile, Sophie's steadiness, Sophie's trust in me. Still at night when the house was quiet, I thought about Melissa. Not the woman she was now, broken, crying, desperate, but the woman she used to be, the one who once believed in me, the one who once built this life with me. And then I remembered Los Angeles. The text, the laughter by the pool. Daniel's safe. He'll always be there. She was right about one thing. I was safe, but not for her. Never again. By the time the next hearing approached, Melissa was a ghost of herself, thin, hollow-eyed, whispering apologies no one believed. Thomas told me she doesn't have the resources to fight anymore. This next ruling will likely make custody permanent. You've already won. I nodded steady. Because winning didn't feel like triumph. It felt like justice. Courtrooms smell of paper and polish. The air is always too cold, as if justice itself requires refrigeration. I sat there in my navy suit hands, folded, heart steady. This was the day everything became permanent. Melissa sat across from me, hollow-eyed, trembling. She wore the same black blazer she'd worn at the first hearing, but now it hung loose on her frame. Beside her, the court-appointed defender flipped through notes half-heartedly. No fire, no confidence, just obligation. When the judge entered the room, hushed. "Case of Carter versus Carter," he intoned. "Final custody determination." Thomas rose first. His voice was calm, measured, certain. "Your Honor, nothing has changed since temporary custody was granted. In fact, matters have worsened. Mrs. Carter remains unemployed without stable housing and with no plan for providing consistent care. Meanwhile, Mr. Carter has maintained a steady household stable income and has been the sole caregiver of Sophie Carter for months. We submit that permanent custody belongs with Mr. Carter. Mrs. Carter may retain limited supervised visitation as deemed appropriate by the court." He handed over thick binders, attendance records, financial documents, statements from Sophie's teachers, even pediatric notes. A picture painted in ink, steady father, reckless mother. Then Melissa stood. Her voice shook. "Your Honor, I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt my family, but I am still Sophie's mother. I love her more than anything. Please, don't take her from me forever." She clutched the edge of the table like it was a lifeline. "I've been trying. I've applied for jobs. I'm looking for a new place. I just need time. I just need a chance." Her words filled the room with desperation, not conviction. The judge's eyes were sympathetic, but his gaze slid back to the documents Thomas had provided. Evidence weighed more than tears. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, your commitment to change is noted. However, your current circumstances are insufficient for full custody. The court cannot prioritize potential over stability. The child's well-being requires certainty, not promises." He turned to me. "Mr. Carter, you have demonstrated consistency, responsibility, and care. The court hereby grants you full permanent custody of Sophie Carter. Mrs. Carter will have supervised visitation once every other week to be arranged through the family center." The gavel struck, sharp, final. Melissa gasped, collapsing into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat still, calm, because the outcome was never in doubt. Outside the courtroom, she ran after me. "Daniel, please don't let them do this. Don't let them take Sophie from me." I turned slowly. "I didn't take her. You gave her up the moment you boarded that plane to Los Angeles." Her tears streaked black down her cheeks. "It was a mistake." "No," I said quietly, "it was a choice." She crumpled against the wall, sliding down until she was a heap on the marble floor. People passed, averting their eyes. I walked away. At home that evening, Sophie crawled into my lap with her favorite book. "Daddy, did the judge say I get to stay with you?" I kissed her hair. "Yes, sweetheart, always." Her smile was pure light. She nestled into me, safe, steady, whole. And in that moment, I knew what Melissa never understood. Safe wasn't boring. Safe was survival. Safe was strength. And I was the one left standing because of it. Melissa had mocked me. Adrian had mocked me. Even her laughter by the pool had mocked me. But in the end, it was the boring, predictable, dependable man who won. Not through anger, not through chaos, through steadiness. When the gavel fell, Melissa lost custody. But what she really lost was the illusion that I was weak. And what I gained was everything that mattered. When the gavel struck, my world went quiet. Not joy, not sorrow, just stillness. The kind that arrives after explosions when the smoke clears and you finally hear your own breath again. For me, the fight was finished. For Melissa, it was only the beginning. Colin called even when I stopped asking. "Information is armor," he said. Maybe it was, or maybe he just didn't know what else to do with the wreckage he saw. "She's bouncing between motels," he told me. "Sometimes friends let her crash, but that's rare now. Her bags don't fit in one trunk anymore." This was the woman who once curated every detail of her image, her nails, her car, her posts online. Now she lived from bag to bag, resume to resume, rejection to rejection. Consequences don't clap for performances. I didn't celebrate. Collapses aren't beautiful, but I didn't mourn either. Choices have gravity. Melissa stepped off, and gravity answered. Supervised visits became her only lifeline. The family center walls were painted with fading murals, cheerful lions, sons with wide smiles. They tried to soften the truth. This was a room for undoing damage. Sophie always ran to me first. She tucked herself under my arm, her body recognizing home. Melissa waited, clutching gifts she could barely afford. A stuffed bear with a bent ear, a puzzle with 2 pieces missing, a plastic doll wrapped in clearance paper. She'd smile too brightly, tears already waiting. "Sweetheart, Mommy loves you. Mommy is getting better." Sophie nodded politely. "Okay, Mommy." The social worker wrote in silence. Melissa noticed. She always noticed. And no amount of charm could erase the clipboard. When the hour ended, Sophie slipped her hand into mine without hesitation. In the parking lot, Melissa whispered, "Daniel, please, tell the court I'm ready for more time." "The court doesn't listen to me," I said evenly. "It listens to you. Show it." Her face crumbled. At home, Sophie thrived. We built Rhythms pancakes on Mondays, library on Tuesdays, soccer on Saturdays, bedtime stories every night. One evening, she paused over a puzzle and said, "It feels calm here." "Yes," I told her, "that's on purpose." Calm, the word Melissa once spat like an insult. Calm was the treasure Sophie clutched with both hands. Her teachers sent notes, more focus, quicker laughter, steady participation. I didn't tape them to the fridge. I carried them inside my chest. Colin updated me again. "Adrian's gone." Evelyn saw to it. "He's blacklisted. No job, no income. His name's Poison." Melissa's calls to him went unanswered. Dozens of voicemails all ignored. I stopped asking for logs. Ghosts don't make good company. Her parents broke too. Driving Sophie one Saturday, I passed their street. Luggage sat on the lawn clothes, spilling into the rain. Melissa stood on the porch, pleading. Her father pointed at the road with rigid mercy. By the time I returned, the lawn was clear. Gravity doesn't negotiate. Sometimes I thought about the woman before Los Angeles. The one who drank coffee with me on Sundays, who argued about paint colors. That ache rose up sometimes. But I let it pass. Memory is not a contract. It's a painting you can't step into. At night, I sat at Sophie's bedside, listening to her steady breath. That sound was victory. Not the gavel, not the whispers. Her sleep. Another visit, another brittle hour. Melissa brought a board game with missing dice. She laughed too loudly when Sophie won. She cried too quickly when the timer buzzed. At the door, she asked me, "Do you even tell her I love her?" "She knows," I said. But knowing someone loves you isn't the same as knowing you can count on them. It wasn't cruelty, it was fact. Love is force. Reliability is structure. Houses don't stand on force alone. Melissa stared at me like the math had betrayed her. Rejection shadowed her life. Landlords said no. Employers said, "We'll call you," and never did. Friends ignored her number. The internet remembers, Colin said. Search her name scandals the first hit. Melissa had built her image for years. Now the image was a cage. "She's working nights," Colin added. "Bars, cleaning gigs, anything cash." I thanked him and turned back to Sophie's spelling list. One night, Sophie asked about the photos. I knelt, met her eyes. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people. That doesn't make it your fault," she thought. Then asked, "Will Mommy stop crying?" "I hope so, but whether she does or doesn't, you'll be okay." "How do you know?" "Because I'm here." Not poetry, a blueprint. Promises kept long enough become walls you can lean on. On a gray Thursday, Melissa arrived late. The social worker marked it down. Halfway through coloring, she whispered, "I'm sorry," then broke into sobs. Sophie froze. Her eyes found mine. I nodded once slow. "Mommy is sad," I said gently. "That's not your fault." Melissa buried her face in her hands. "I wish I could take it back. Maybe she meant the trip. Maybe she meant everything. Regret isn't a key. It's only a mirror." Some nights I imagined the version of us that never fractured, where she never sent the message, where Adrian never appeared, where Sophie grew in a house with both parents. I let that version stay in a locked room in my head. You can visit a museum, you can't live in it. The real house had lunches to pack, cleats to find, alarms to set. Ordinary, relentless, good, safe. The word she sneered at, the word Sophie prayed for. Autumn came. The air smelled of wood smoke. Sophie and I carved a pumpkin. She laughed at the seeds sliding through her fingers, then helped roast them until the house smelled like October. She drew a picture later, 2 stick figures under a square house with a triangle roof. "That's you and me," she said. "The roof is heavy, so rain can't come in." I taped it inside the pantry door where no one else would see. Some trophies aren't for display. Colin's last update was short. "She's quiet now. Drinking more, fewer calls. Looks like winter." Silence means peace sometimes. Sometimes it means ending. I didn't celebrate either. I checked the locks, set the thermostat, laid out Sophie's jacket. I saw Melissa one more time outside the family center. She held a paper cup, steam curling in the cold. She didn't speak. She just watched Sophie take my hand and skip over a crack in the sidewalk. For a second, I almost wanted to tell her I'd have chosen the quiet life she despised. Then I remembered the text, "Don't be jealous. Take care of Sophie." I answered it late with a life. Back home, I tucked Sophie in. The house hummed steady. The roof held. The bridge held. Melissa had one narrow doorway left into Sophie's world, a chair, a clock, a camera, a social worker's pen. That was the price of excitement, the prison of her choices. She once said I'd always be there. She was right, but not for her. For the child who sleeps without fear because I will not fail. For the life that opens its small, ordinary hands and trusts me to hold it. For the kind of love that outlasts betrayal, ruin, grief, and still wakes early to pack a lunch exactly the way she likes it. After the fall, this is what remained a steady line through the noise. I followed it home. Revenge stories usually end with fire, explosions, some final blow that knocks the villain flat and leaves the hero standing over the ashes. Mine didn't. Mine ended with silence. Melissa's fall didn't crash in one day. It leaked drop by drop. A late bill here, a denied application there. A look from strangers that told her she was recognized for all the wrong reasons. Colin called less often. Not because he lost interest, but because there was less to say. "She's quiet," he reported one evening. "No steady job, no steady address, drinks too much, moves too often, neighbors don't know her name before she's gone again." It wasn't news, it was residue. The woman who once strutted into rooms and bent conversations toward her was now a footnote barely noticed, fading. Supervised visits remained. She came thinner, shakier, sometimes late, sometimes not at all. The social worker's notes filled with words like inconsistent and fragile. One afternoon, Melissa tried to braid Sophie's hair. Her hands shook too much. Sophie pulled away gently, then walked to me asking, "Daddy, can you do it?" I knelt, tied the braid steady, simple. Melissa watched, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "You always were better at being calm." She meant it as confession, not insult. But it landed the same way. Sophie grew. Her world expanded, school projects, soccer games, friends' birthdays. She laughed louder, ran faster, slept easier. One night while brushing her teeth, she asked, "Daddy, will Mommy ever live with us again?" I crouched beside her. "No, sweetheart, that's not going to happen. But she'll always be your mother and she'll always see you at visits." Sophie thought about it, then nodded. "That's okay. I like it here." The simplicity of children cuts sharper than any court order. Melissa tried to cling to what little she had left. She brought gifts she couldn't afford. She promised trips she'd never take. She begged Sophie to remember moments that slipped through her fingers like water. But children remember consistency. Sophie remembered pancakes on Mondays, storybooks at night, a father who showed up every morning and every evening without fail. Melissa's grand gestures collapsed under the weight of steady routines. Her parents stopped speaking of her. The last time I heard their names in the same sentence as hers was through a neighbor. They don't know where she is these days. They've stopped trying. Friends dropped her. Employers blacklisted her. Even gossip blogs moved on. The world doesn't keep villains in the spotlight forever. It erases them when the spectacle fades. And Melissa faded. I thought I'd feel satisfaction, some great swelling triumph at seeing her erased by her own choices. Instead, I felt nothing but clarity. Revenge wasn't fire. Revenge was steadiness. Revenge was survival. She mocked me for being safe. Safe was what broke her. Sophie's drawings filled the fridge. Houses with big roofs, trees taller than stick figures, smiling suns. She always drew two people inside the house, me and her. One evening, she slipped me another picture. This one showed three figures, me, Sophie, and Melissa. But Melissa was outside the house standing in the rain. "Why is Mommy outside?" I asked gently. Sophie shrugged. "Because she leaves a lot, but you don't." I kissed her forehead. "That's right, I don't." Time passed. Seasons turned. We carved pumpkins, shoveled snow-planted flowers, packed school lunches. Life stitched itself back together, not in dramatic knots, but in patient seams. Melissa showed up less. Sometimes she missed visits entirely. Sometimes she sat silent through them, staring at Sophie with haunted eyes, words failing. The social worker's reports grew thinner. Mother disengaged, father consistent. The contrast wrote itself. The last time I saw Melissa, it wasn't at a visit. It was by chance outside a grocery store, her figure hunched against the cold, a paper bag clutched in her arms. She looked older than her years, skin-pale hair, unkempt, eyes dim. She saw me, froze, then looked past me to Sophie, who was skipping ahead with her backpack bouncing. Melissa's lips parted. For a moment, I thought she might speak. She didn't. She just watched as Sophie slipped her hand into mine. Then Melissa turned away, swallowed by the crowd. At home that evening, Sophie asked, "Was that Mommy?" "Yes," I said softly. She looked sad. "Yes." "Are you sad?" I shook my head. "No, because we're okay." Sophie smiled faintly. "We're more than okay." That night after she was asleep, I walked through the house. The roof stood, the walls held, the hum of the furnace was steady. This was the life Melissa called boring, predictable, dull. This was the life that saved us. Revenge wasn't shouting. Revenge wasn't rage. Revenge was building something she couldn't enter. Revenge was raising a child she couldn't claim. Revenge was steadiness. Melissa once told me I'd always be there. She was right. But not for her. For Sophie. For the quiet mornings. For the ordinary nights. For the calm that she clings to like treasure. That was the ending. Not fire, not noise. Just a steady line through the wreckage. I followed it home. When people talk about revenge, they picture fire. Fury that burns bright enough to scorch the world and leave nothing behind. But that was never mine. My revenge was quieter, steadier. It wasn't fire, it was foundation. Melissa mocked me for being safe, for being predictable, for being the man who never strayed from the line. She left chasing excitement and she found ruin instead. Adrian abandoned her. Evelyn dismantled him. Her friends disappeared. Even her parents turned away. And in the end, the only doorway she had left into Sophie's life was one guarded by cameras, clocks, and clipboards. Meanwhile, Sophie thrived. Not because I shouted, not because I struck back, but because I stood steady. I cooked breakfasts, packed lunches, read bedtime stories, and built a rhythm she could count on. She didn't need fire. She needed calm. And calm was the one thing Melissa could never give her. So yes, Melissa was right about one thing. I'll always be here. But not for her. Never again. I'll be here for Sophie. For the life she deserves. For the mornings filled with pancakes and the nights filled with stories. For the safety that holds even when storms come. In the end, revenge wasn't about destroying Melissa. It was about proving her wrong. Safe wasn't weakness. Safe was survival. And safe is the reason my daughter sleeps without fear. That's the line that held, and I'll follow it home. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.